Daf Peitet. We'll start the Mishnah at the bottom of Daf Peichet Amud Bet. It's a beautiful Mishnah. You got it? I know we don't have a big Gemara for you. We got it. Okay. Says the Mishnah, this is actually a continuation of things we've been discussing the last few days, but the question of what about rumors, right? So we were, again, it's really hard to relate to this, I'd say, in our terms, because I don't think it means the exact same thing anymore. But essentially, the Mishnah says, let's start from the Mishnah, Yatza Shma Be'ir Mikudeshet. Let's say word goes out in the city that this woman, we'll call her, what are we going to call her? Rachel, is married, right? Says the Mishnah, then Harezu Mikudeshet. Then she's considered to be married. Now, we're going to see, of course, it doesn't mean that she can then assume, well, maybe it does mean that, but presumably what it means is that if then someone else wants to marry her, she has to obtain a get from that first person, or we have to presume that that person's not alive in order for her to get married. So we rely on this reputation, on this kol. If the kol goes out that migureshet, that she's divorced, harezim migureshet, then we assume that she's divorced. Now, the Gemara, of course, is going to point out, it doesn't mean that a woman who's married and then all of a sudden people are saying she's not married without seeing a get, we can allow her to remarry. It's probably assuming lechumra, that she can't eat truma if she's married to a Kohen, right? That you have to assume that she might have been divorced. But we'll see that in the Gemara. Continues the Mishnah very, very importantly, as long as there's no amatla. I have no idea how to translate amatla in English, but the interpretive meaning is a mitigating factor, an excuse, an explanation. Usually amatla is an explanation, meaning as long as there's not some justification for the kol, right? People are out there and they're saying, oh, we heard that Rachel got married, but it was on condition, or but it was, not for sure. What does that mean? Continues the Mishnah. Ezuhi amatla. Let's say someone says, Girish ish ploni et ishto al tnai. A person, we heard that so-and-so divorced his wife, but it was conditional, right? And we don't know if the condition was kept, but then you don't rely on the reputation, meaning it's already doubtful. So of course, if you know for sure that he divorced his wife, then she would be a divorced woman. But if you don't know, but it might be is not enough. Or the next case, which we love, we said so many times, Zarakla Kidusha, that this we heard. Did you guys hear what happened last night in the fair? Ruvain threw a money to Sarah and said, "I want you to marry me." She said, "Great," but we don't know if the money got to her. Right? Safek karov la, safek karov lo. It's a safek whether the money was close to her, in which case she'd be married, or close to him. Zuhi amatla. That's considered to be like a mitigating factor, where even though people are talking about this wedding, people are talking about this marriage, it's not a real marriage, and if she denies it, you can allow her to marry somebody else until you have proof that she's in fact married. Now, says the Gemara, before you get too deep, we're going to get into this, don't worry, today, about what the kol is. What does that mean? There's a word is that she's married. But says the Gemara at the bottom of Daf Peichet Amud Bet, what do you mean, Asrina la'agavra? Are you really going to say about a woman, God bless you, let's say a woman's married, and all of a sudden you hear a kol, 5 years ago, this woman, everyone remembers she got married to somebody else. You're going to now say that she's married to the first person, or suffix married, and she can't stay with the second person. V'ha'amar Rav Ashi, we have a very important klal that we've had many times in this Masechet, that Rav Ashi said, kol kala debatar kiddushin nisuin sari lo chashinim la. If you have a kol, if a woman has a reputation that she might be married, you have to worry about that. But if a man gets married and then 10 months later, or one day, or 5 years, we hear, his wife, something happened in Milwaukee 10 years ago, we don't pay attention to that. Once a person's married, unless you have proof, you don't pay attention to rumors, right? Kol kala debatar nisuin lo chashinim la. Says, no, you're right. Of course, if it happened after she's married, it doesn't matter. But hachikamer, this is what our Mishnah seems to say. Yatza shma be'ir mikudeshet, harezu mikudeshet. Not a woman who's married, and then we hear that she was previously married. It's a woman who's a pnuya. She's unmarried. But all of a sudden, people are saying, unmarried. We heard that there was a story last summer that so-and-so got married. Then you have to assume that she is married. And just to be clear, so what a kol means is that in order for someone else to marry her, they have to ensure that she gets a get from the first man. Even, and this is what I'm saying now is not universal, but it's close to universal. even if you go and check and the man says, I never married her, right? It's not a question of birur of the facts. It's a question of reputation. And once the word has gone out and a woman is called married and everyone says she's married, in order for us to allow her to marry somebody else, she has to get a get from the first person, which would aser the Kohen also, but yes, or maybe, right? She has to get a get from the first person. So then mikudeshet. And then continues the Mishnah, migureshet. If you have a rumor that she's divorced, harezu migureshet. My time, I'm sorry, that's not, let me read it again. Let me read from the bottom because I said it wrong. Hachikamer, 2 lines from the bottom. Yatza shma bi'ir mikudeshet, harezu mikudeshet. If people say this woman, Rachel, was married, then you have to assume she's married. And if you want to marry her, then you have to ensure that she gets a divorce from that first person. But if the word goes out that says, oh, Rachel last summer, you heard what happened was terrible. This man married her and then he divorced her the next day, right? Mikudeshet umigureshet, then harezu migureshet. Then you assume she is divorced, meaning she can marry someone else, because you, even though don't usually believe a rumor of divorce, the rumor that she got married is the same rumor that she got divorced. As we say on top, my time, kol v'shovro imo. You've got the responsibility and the release together in one place, and therefore it's reliable. Now, continues the Gemara on the second line of Daf Peitet. Now, Amar Rava, what if there's Yatzel Hashem Mizaneh Be'ir? There's a reputation. Again, it's a little hard to explain this. I think they lived in much smaller cities, of course, right? So it wasn't like some random, maybe it's similar to, I don't know, with the internet, small city in the world. But the word goes out that this woman is Mizaneh. She's sleeping with people. She's not, following practices of I don't know, not sleeping around, let's say. She's Mizaneh. So now why does that matter, right? Then the person wants to marry her. So it turns out that probably it doesn't matter if she's not sleeping with someone who's already married, right? And if it's not the person she wants to marry. But for a Kohen, it might marry, right? A Kohen is not allowed to, Isha zona v'chalala lo yikacho, right? A Kohen cannot marry a woman who's a zona. So a woman who is sleeping with people, which makes her a zona, we had a whole discussion in Yevamot about what that qualifies, let's say to a non-Jew or to an Eved. So then can she marry a Kohen? Says Rava, yes. Yatzel Hashem mizaneh be'ir, if the word goes out that a woman is mizaneh, ein choshishin ma. You don't have to worry about that rumor. Why? Not because you think it's not true, but because my time of pritzuta ba'alma who did dashube, the chazuba. It's presumably she's acting inappropriately. She's fooling around with these people, non-Jews in this case. She maybe is taking them to her house. She's, doing everything that you would think leads to znut, but that doesn't mean that she's doing the act. And people are very quick, this is a social commentary, to assume the worst, especially in women, that they're definitely doing something inappropriate. And that's not, although it might be true, until you have proof or you have real reason to think that, as long as she denies it, right, and she says, I didn't do it, we trust her. You have to assume, you can assume that people are only saying it, not because they saw her do it, but because they saw her acting inappropriately, and therefore they jumped to this conclusion. So that's a common thing in human behavior, at least it was in Rava's time. In fact, says the Gemara Kittanai, in fact, there's a whole machloket Tanaim about how you should view people's behavior. Do you assume the worst? Do you assume the best? Says the Braita, 4 lines from the top. Let's say you have a woman. The simplest explanation is that she's a Penuya. Just want to make sure Rashi agrees with that simple explanation. That she is a woman who, hold on. He doesn't say, okay, let's just say she's a Penuya, and she's a woman, but I guess it could be any case. It could be she's married as well, but she acts in ways that are considered to be very inappropriate. For example, what's an example, Nova? She eats in public. Now, presumably a woman who's so parutz to eat in public, it's only one step away from being mizana with other people, from sleeping with other men. Because, right? Now, obviously, it was culturally very different, because I don't think we would say this today. But it says the Braita, a woman who's achla b'shuk, she eats in public, or girgira b'shuk, or she walks around girgira. It means literally her neck, that she either exposes her neck or she walks around in a way that, again, for those times was considered to be very provocative, maybe, or very, not provocative, but very, very inappropriate. Or hinika b'shuk, or she nurses her child in public. Again, something that obviously today I don't think we would relate to this way, or at least I don't think in many cultures we would. But then it was considered to be very, not promiscuous, but very open. Bikulan Rabbi Meir Omer Tetzei. In all those cases, Rabbi Meir said, this woman, you have to assume that she slept with someone else, that she's not preserving the kedusha of her marriage. If she's married, she's not a pnuya. If she's not, and you get divorced. Rabbi Kiva says that's ridiculous. That you just saw something inappropriate. You don't have to assume she slept with another person unless, what would you have to assume? Unless everybody was saying it. Says Rabbi Akiva, Nisha Yisuvi Itnuba Muzeret B'Levana. Muzeret B'Levana literally means those who weave under the moonlight, right? So the gossip shuk, however we call it, right? Where everyone's talking. So I guess they didn't have much else to do while you were weaving, and it was at dark, so you couldn't do other avoda. So the people would be sitting around and chatting. And obviously that's where all the good gossip and all the bad gossip, right, comes out. So says Rabbi Akiva, the fact that you just see her acting inappropriately, assuming this is inappropriate behavior, does not mean she had an affair with someone. But if everybody in the market is talking about her having an affair with this person, you have to assume that it happened, and you have to treat her accordingly, and therefore you can't marry her if you're a Kohen, or you have to divorce her if you're not. So you treat it that way. Says Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, another voice here, Amar Lo, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, this is ridiculous. If you relied on every rumor you heard, Im Kain lo hinachta bat Avraham Avinu sheyushevet tachat ba'ala. You wouldn't find one Jewish woman who can stay with her husband. Everyone's got rumors about them. Everyone's talking about everything. HaToras Amra ki matzah ba ervat davar. So we're going to have in tomorrow's Mishnah, the last Mishnah in Gittin, that if a man should divorce his wife if she has an erva, if she's literally seen or known to have an affair. Right? HaTorah Amra ki matzah ba'ervat davar la'alanu omer al pi shnayim edim or al pi shlosha edim yakum davar. That you need 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses, not rumors. Ma lahalan davar barur, afkan davar barur. Says Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, a person should not break up his relationship unless it's very clear. If there's just rumors, even very repeated rumors, that's not enough. And so, in fact, there's a machloket Tanaim, and this is what Rava was saying at the top of the daf, that, it really depends on the context, and it depends on how you could reinterpret it. As long as you can reinterpret it in a way that maybe she didn't have an affair and people were just saying things, then you should rely on your reinterpretation. If you saw it happen, or someone says, I was there and I knew it happened, that changes things. But just seeing behavior that could be interpreted that way does not mean that that's what it is. Okay, continues the Gemara at the 2 dots. Is that right? Yep. Tanura Banan. Okay. Let's say the word goes out, there's a rumor about a certain woman that she's be'ula, that she has already slept with a man. Remember, a Kohen Gadol has to marry a betula, but she can still marry a Kohen Gadol. You don't worry about this because it's not proven, it's not known, it's just a rumor. Or if they say nisua, the word goes out that this woman is not currently married, but she once was married and she's divorced. So remember, a Kohen can't marry a grusha, but in choshishimla, it's just a rumor. And so the fact that people are saying it, if there's no proof and there's no evidence behind it, you don't have to worry about it. Arusa, same thing. They say she was engaged, ain't choshishimla. So shalola ploni, let's say they say, this woman was married, but we have no idea who she's married to. We know that she got married. No one knows who that person is. We don't know who the ploni is. Then again, ain't choshishimla. Or if they say be'ir acheret, we heard she traveled to Baltimore and she got married. Ain't choshishimla. Or if they say she's mamzeret, the word goes out this woman is a mamzeret, so she can't marry pretty much anyone. Ein choshishimla. Or she's a shivcha. She's just acting like a Jewish person. She's really not a free person. She's not Jewish. Ein choshishimla. Or if they say hektish ploni nichasav, right? Jeff over there, he gave all his money to hektish, meaning nothing that he's giving you now is his anymore. Or hifkir ploni nichasav, he made everything hefker. All of these, ein choshishimla, all of these, you don't worry about. So this Braita says sort of that all these things are just rumors. Now, of course, how do you understand our Mishnah? Right, our Mishnah said that if you have a rumor, yatsa shma be'ir, that she's mikudeshet, then you treat her like she's mikudeshet. But the Braita just says that you ignore what people say. So is it true? Which one is it? Do you ignore what people say, or do you have to listen to the rumors? Says Abaya, well, let me explain it to you. When we say there's a rumor that she got married, it doesn't mean that people are saying, oh, she's married. It means, Ula, I said Abaya. Amar Ula, lo shishamu kol havara, right? When we say that in the Mishnah that a woman is married, there's a rumor that she's married, it doesn't mean that you just hear people say out of the blue, oh, yeah, oh, we heard she got married 2 years ago. Then you wouldn't have to pay any attention to that. Ella, the case has to be Kedei she nerot dogot. You're talking about a case where you're walking down the street and you look into the event hall, right? Which of course they didn't have event halls, but they had it in their houses, and all the lights are lit. And what else would you put out for a wedding? Mitot mutzot, all the tables, right? They used to sit in, I guess, the Roman style. All the beds are out for people to have a huge feast. Ubnei adam nichnasim v'yotzim. Everyone's wearing their tux and they're walking in and out and they're gathering. V'omrim, and they're saying, "Oh, we're all going to the wedding of Plonit. Plonit mitkadeshet hayom. Plonit, this woman Rachel, is getting married today." Says, "Well, what's that? That's a rumor." Then, even though you didn't see the wedding, right? You were there. You saw everyone announcing and talking about going to this wedding. So then you have to assume that she got married. So why do you assume that? They only said we're going to get married. Maybe they showed up at the wedding and she ran away. Maybe, maybe something happened. So how do you know that she got married? Mikadeshet, demalo ikadsha, ema, so say, plonit nitkadsha hayom. Everyone's walking in and out to this, beautiful event hall in their finest clothing, eating and drinking and saying, oh, we're coming from the wedding of this woman. And that's, of course, you didn't see the wedding. And 2 days later, you can't find any of these people anymore, right? As it probably is. It was a roving band of travelers. But you were there and you saw them announcing that there was a wedding. So therefore, you have to assume that's a rumor because there's no one who actually saw the wedding and testifies. But you were there and you saw people going to the wedding. So that's considered where you have to worry about a kol. Chentani Levi taught very similarly that lo shamu kol havara, I can't either. Not that you heard a rumor that a woman got married. El kidei shehei nerot dokot, the lamps are lit. Mitod mutzot, the tables are set. Nashim mitavot lo arhaner, the women are weaving or knitting, which they would do at a happy occasion. I don't know the context. Usmechotla, and they're making happiness. They're making a simcha v'omrot, and they're saying plonit mitzkatsha hayom, that so and so is getting married today. Again, the Gemara asks when he is getting married, then that wouldn't be concerning because maybe she never got married, right? And just again to clarify, according to Ula and Levi, if you had all of this happening, and I walked by. Let's say I'm the source of the rumors, right? And I walked by and I heard them saying, so-and-so is getting married today. And then 5 days later, we can't find anybody. That's not enough to assume she got married. Just hearing people set up the wedding hall, buy the caterer, is not enough. You have to have someone who walked by and said, she got married. So that's Gemara mitkadeshet, right? Demalo itkadsha. Where am I? Amar Papa, ema plonit nitkadsha hayom. I had to walk by, or many people walked by, and they saw a celebration, and they saw all the trappings of a wedding, and they heard them people say, we're at the wedding of so-and-so. So that is, even though, again, you can't find any witnesses later that they actually got married, right? Because they ran away, or they walked away, or whatever it was. The fact that everybody heard about this and the word went out, that's enough to assume she's married. And if she wants to marry somebody else, she has to get a get from the first one. And even if she says, I never got married, and the man says, we never got married, the fact that the word on the street is that she's married means that as a takana, we basically treat her like she's married and make her get a get before she goes and marries somebody else. Amar Rabba bar Chana, Amar Reb Yochanan, again, the same kind of feeling, same kind of statement. Lo shamu kol havara, again, it's not where we just heard people speaking about them getting married. Ella kidei shehei nerot dokot, the lamps are lit, mitom mutzot, bnei adam nichnasim v'yotzim, and they're going in and out, right? They said to Rabbi Chana, Amru, they said, what do you mean? Davar zehu kol, right? Amru davar zeh, or davar. If they say the thing, they say they're getting married or they are married, zehu kol. That's a rumor, right? That's a word that people are married. Lo amru davar, if they don't say anything, right? You just see it happening, but you don't hear the words, you don't hear the context, and you make an assumption. You're like, oh, that man's, wearing a tux and she's wearing a white wedding dress or whatever color they wore back then, and they're going into the wedding and they're singing all the right songs, then that's harezu amatla. That is ezeu amatla. Says, well, what do you mean that's an amatla? An amatla means an excuse. They didn't say anything. Lo amru, hello amru. They didn't say anything. Lo klum. What we're saying is lafukim the Rabba Barafuna. The Amar, we're going to have an Amud bet that an amatla she amru afilu mikan alasara yamim. That if you say an excuse, meaning if you say, so let me just clarify all this because it might be confusing. But right, so again, what happened here is I'm walking down the street and I saw a wedding hall and everything set up, and people say, Ruvain is married Sarah. Let's go have a big party. So that's considered a kol. So what's an amatla? So we explained in our Mishnah, an amatla is where you hear people say, Ruvain married Sarah, but then Sarah says, oh, but it was on condition that he give me $10,000. He never gave me $10,000. I'm not married, right? So an amatla is where there's a way out, right? So what we're going to say on Amud Bet is the question is, what if the way out happens later? What if I walk by that hall and I hear them getting married, and then 5 days later I go in and say, oh, I heard Sarah got married, and people say, oh, no, she got married on condition, the condition wasn't kept, and therefore she's not really married. Can the amatla happen after the fact? Or does it have to be at the same time? Where you heard, oh, there's a big wedding going on, but don't buy them a present yet, right? Because it's conditional marriage, and you never know if it's really gonna last. So that would be where the amatla exists at the same time. So this is lafuke to say that that's wrong, and the amatla has to happen at the same time. So it's not like Rabba Barafuna, the Amar Matla Shamru can happen afila kana Sarah Yamim, even 10 days later, Kamash Malan, that lo amru hu dahain hi amatla. If they don't say anything, meaning you don't hear them say that a marriage is happening, then you can assume there was no marriage. But ha amru, if they did say lo havi amatla, then you don't have an excuse. You don't have a way to get out of that marriage. Amar Reb Abba, Amar Rafuna, Amar Rav. One more statement, I think is one more. It's the last one. We're like 8 lines from the bottom of the narrow lines. Says Reb Abba, Amar Rafuna, Amar Rav, Lo shamu kol havara. Again, it's not where you heard just a rumor that a man married a woman. El kadesh yomru, people have to say, Ploni nehechan shama. Right? I walk in, let's say I'm the source of this rumor, and say, I heard that Ruvain married Sarah. So they say to you, where did you hear that? What do you mean you heard it? You read it, you listened to some guy on the train, you don't know who that is. You have to tell them where you heard it. You have to say, Ploni mehechan shama, mi Ploni. I heard it from Nava. And who did Nava hear it from? Ploni mi Ploni. Nava heard it, we can go down the list, right? If Nava heard it from the next person, ubodkin v'hochin ad shemegin lecha ledavar habarur, right? You have to get to the source of the rumor and interrogate that person and find out what really happened. So a rumor means that I don't know that it happened, but I heard from Nava that it happened. She heard from someone. You go and find the final person and find out that it really happened. So that's not a rumor. That's edut, right? If you trace it to the source and you find out that it really happened, davar habarur edut ma'yatahu, right? That's considered to be edut. Ella says Shmuel, Kiata Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Amar Rav Abba, Amar Rafuna, Amar Rav. It's not Shmuel. This is Rav Shmuel. Lo sheshamanu kol havara. It doesn't mean that you just heard a rumor. El kadeshi yomru. You have to know. You say to the person that heard that Ruvain married Sarah. You say to them, Mehechan shama. Where did you hear it from? And he has to say, or she has to say, Miploni. I heard it from someone. And then that person told me they heard it from someone. That person heard it from someone else. Of course, these people are not here anymore, right? They're all away on trips in the year in Israel or something, right? But I can at least give a reliable name. I heard it from so-and-so, who heard it from so-and-so who said they saw it, right? So that's not witness testimony because you can't really interrogate the person, but it's a reliable evidence chain, I would say. Right? So I heard it Ploni, and this Ploni happened to go on a plane across the sea. So we can't ask the person, but we have a sort of names of what happened. Fine. So now we're at the first wide line, and the next question that comes up is, now that we know what a kol is, we know what a rumor is, right? It means not just that you hear so-and-so is married, but you either someone who was said they walked by the wedding, or someone who says, I heard from so-and-so, heard from so-and-so. What if you can clarify the facts, right? So Rashi sort of gives a couple of explanations here. But one is, let's say this last case. I say I heard it from so-and-so, heard it from so-and-so, finally heard it from James, but James is not here. We can't clarify, right? So there's a call that I say that we heard ultimately from James that Sarah is married. She can't get married to a Kohen. She's got to get a get. But let's say 3 days later, we finally managed to send an email to James, and he says back and says, you misunderstood the whole story. I was talking about the wedding of an aunt, not a person, right? An aunt named Sarah, who, the Gemara has that case, right? So that was a famous case. You hear the kids talking, and they were talking about a wedding of the aunts, right? So what if you clarify? Can you then say, oh, this rumor that we heard that Sarah's married was a big mistake. Sarah can go marry anybody. She doesn't need a get. Or do you say, once the word is out there, it's very hard to take it away. And you have to assume for practical purposes that she is in fact married and has to get a get in order to marry somebody else. So as the Gemara in the first wide line, Amalei Abaya Rav Yosef, Nivatlinan kala olo mevatlinan. Can you cancel a rumor, or can you never cancel it once it's spread? Amar Le, so he said to him, Mida Amar Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda was quoted as saying, Ad yishmu mi piha kshirim. A person has to say, I heard it from someone who's kosher to give testimony. If you require someone who's kosher to give testimony, shma mina mivatlin kala. You see that you can cancel a rumor, because let's say you clarify this rumor came from someone who couldn't give testimony because they were pasal leidut or they were related, then you would cancel the kol. So even where a kol is established, you can interrogate the people and cancel it. Amalei said, Adarabba, I got an opposite proof. Midam of Sheshet, afilim mipi nashim havikol. Even if it's from women who are not kosher leidut, but are reliable, that would count as a kol. So shmamina lo mevatlin kala. You see that once it's been said from a source that was at that time it was said, thought to be reliable, you can no longer cancel it just by showing that they're not kosher the testimony. Amalei, he said back to him, the truth is, atarvata ninhu. It depends, atarvata, it depends on the neighborhood, on the area. Meaning, it's basically based on local practice and whether we rely on people. And again, it depends on how people take it seriously or not. In certain neighborhoods, if you heard a word that a testimony that a woman was married, you would treat her like an Eshet Ish, and in some places you wouldn't. So it depends on the neighborhood. Bisura mevatli kala. In Surah, they would cancel a kol if they got more information that said it was wrong. And Naharda, where Shmuel lived, which is going to be very important in a minute, lo mevatli kala. In Naharda, they never canceled a kol. So once the rumor went out that a woman was married, you had to treat her like she was married. And if she wanted to marry somebody else, she would have to get a get from that first person. The Barbe Rav. There was once a rumor went out that so-and-so, this woman, what are we calling her? Sarah, married a student in the yeshiva, Barbe Rav. And then, of course, the father came and said it never happened. She didn't really get married. It was a big misunderstanding. I want her to marry somebody else, right? After Rabbi Chama le'avua, the Rabbi Chama came to the father came to Rabbi Chama. Amalei, Emily hechi havi uvda. Explain to me what happened, right? Why are people saying your daughter got married to this guy? So Amalei said, it's true. My daughter had a big wedding. We all celebrated. But al t'nai kaddish. She got married to him, and she accepted kiddushin on condition that he wouldn't leave or something. He wouldn't go away, right? That he wouldn't go to Beit Chozai, wherever reason she didn't want to go to Beit Chozai. Either it was a place that wasn't good, or it was a place that was far away. But Azal, he went to Beit Chozai. So it's true that last week I made a big wedding for my daughter, but it was all on condition, and the condition wasn't fulfilled, right? Or he didn't go according to it. So Amar Le, Rav Chama said to him, look, I can't allow her to be married to someone else, because Kivan de be'idna de havi kala lo havi amalta. A week ago, when they announced in the papers that she got married, then he hadn't gone away yet. So you didn't have an excuse yet. At that point, although they weren't quite married, because retroactively he didn't fulfill the marriage, at that time, it hadn't yet gone to Beit Chozai. So when they said she was married, she really was married in the sense that he hadn't yet violated the condition. And therefore, an amatla, an excuse or a way out that happens after the fact is not enough. So she would have to get a get from him in order to marry somebody else, right? So, where am I? At the time, the havi kala lo havi amatla, lav kol keminach de michsakta amatla. You can't just get an amatla later and cancel the wedding without having a get. There was a woman who the rumor went around. This is a bizarre case that she got married. She's such a, again, I don't know if it's bad for her or just that she's crazy, that she got married with taking the chun away dates, right? They used to be, I don't know, not if anyone here eats dates, but usually if you eat a date and they're ripe dates, then the pit comes off very clean, right? You eat the whole date around it, and you have a very, very clean pit. But if the dates are raw, or these were bad dates, or low quality dates, then they stick to the pit, basically. So after I eat the date and chew it up, there's still some nourishment attached to the pit. And so they used to take those and feed them to animals, right? Because the animals would suck on it. But that's obviously a very, very low class, disgusting kind of thing. This guy came to this woman and said, look, I got a bucket full of these chewed up dates. Let me marry you based on them. And she said, okay. Right. So, yeah. So that's why the story, everyone talked about this because it was a crazy story. Right. So she accepted Kiddushin in Atzipa de Tuchla, these chewed up dates, in Ina de Beishifi, in the Ina, the spring of Beishifi. Whatever. It was some crazy story. These young, kids nowadays, they're out in some spring in the desert and they, whatever. So that was the rumor. Now, of course, she then denied the whole thing. So Sholcho Bey, Sholcho Ravidi Barav in the Kameda Abaya, Ki Hagavna Mai. Do we have to listen to this rumor? And she married. Amarle, no, kala. Even where you usually don't cancel a rumor, here, kala. Here you for sure cancel the rumor because everybody, if they go and see this woman go get married to another man, they're not going to say, oh, she's a married woman and she got remarried. They're going to assume that this story never really happened the way you heard it because it's such a crazy story, right? Meimar Amar, people are going to say, that they looked into it and they saw that this is not worth a penny, right? These tune-up dates. So people are going to assume that the fact that she went ahead and got married to somebody else is because her first marriage or a rumored marriage was never a real marriage. And so you can rely on that kind of amatla in that case. There was another case, top now of Daf Peitet Amabet, that a woman got married to one of a certain family, but nobody even knows which one, right? This family had 5 kids. And we heard that this woman got married, accepted Kiddushin from one of the kids. They were playing around and she said yes. So Amar Rava, that's also, you don't have to worry about that because Afil Amanda Amar, Lama Vatlin Kala, even if you usually don't cancel a rumor that a woman's got married, the Hamivatlin Kala, in this case you would, Maimar Amri, because people will say, again, if she goes ahead and then marries somebody else, but she was never married to that kid from the family. Ainu Bu Rabbanan Bikidusha Vikidushe Katan Havi. They probably looked into it and saw that she accepted Kiddushin from a 10-year-old kid, meaning, or anyone less than Bar Mitzvah, who couldn't have dat to give Kiddushin. So therefore, because the circumstances are so vague, because we don't know which kid she was married to, or there was not even a rumor of which kid, you don't have to pay attention to that rumor. 4th line. There was a woman who word went out that she accepted Kiddushin from a child who was like 10 years old, 12 years old, but he looked like an adult. He was 6 feet tall, right? So he was a child who looked like an adult. Amalei of Mordechai Ravashi, again, the same thing. Havi Uvda Amru, it happened once, and they said, let the woman go get married to anybody. It's not a real call because the kid's a katan. The rumor is he's a katan, even though he looks like an adult. Adayin lohiyah the Falgut Ruvain. The child didn't reach the state of maturity that we call Palgut Ruvain, which is based on the pasuk in Shoftim, Shenemar Leflagut Ruvain Gidolim Chikrilev. To the divisions of Ruvain required Gidolim, people who were truly mature, who can actually understand things. And therefore, again, although it's a rumor that she accepted Kiddushin, the rumor has an amatla with it that he was a minor, and therefore no one has to pay attention to that Kiddushin. We're at the 2 dots now. Amar Rabba Barafuna, which we had on Amad Aleph, Amatla Shamru. when you have an excuse that goes along with this rumor, that we rumor that this woman got married, but there's a reason why it was probably not a good marriage, or we don't have to, not probably, but possibly not a good marriage. It can even be up to 10 days. And meaning it can be even after the fact. So you heard a rumor that Reuven got married to Sarah, and then a week later, someone comes and said, oh, did you hear about that wedding? Reuven got married to Sarah on condition that he doesn't ever play football again, and he went and played football the next day, right? And so that would cancel the rumor. Rav Zvid says, look, anywhere where you have a conceivable amatla, you can come up with any potential excuse, you use the excuse, right? Any circumstance where you can assume there's an amatla, you come up with one. Eitvi of Papa, the Rav Zvid, Rav Papa asked Rav Zvid, what do you mean? Our Mishnah said that if there's a rumor, she's considered to be married as long as there's not an amatla. It didn't say you can imagine an amatla. It said Bilvad, we're quoting our Mishnah now, Shlo tehei sham amatla. There was no excuse. There was no way out of it. How do you translate amatla, Miriam?
Mitigating factors.
Mitigating factor. Okay, thank you. As long as there was no mitigating factor. Amalei, no, Rav Zvid said, it means there's no potential mitigating factor, meaning there's no conceivable way to justify that this wedding wasn't a real wedding, right? Amalei Rav Papa, Batlo Tizbara, said Rav Papa, you don't agree that you can come up with mitigating factors out of the fine air? Hatnam, what about the Mishnah that we had in Yevamot? The Mishnah says the following case, right? A woman is married to a man. The man goes away on a long vacation, right? He goes on a boat ride to Antarctica. And of course, you never know if he's going to come back. 2 years passed, and she gives up on him. And she goes and gets married to somebody else. Nitkacha. She gets Kiddushin, not Nisuin. She didn't consummate the marriage, but she accepted Kiddushin from another man. Achakach ba ba'ala. And then her husband showed up. Says the Mishnah, muteret lachzor, right? You're allowed to go back and go to your first husband. Why? Why don't you say, now, what's the matla here? So we assume that when she accepted Kiddushin from the second husband, right, the second man, that there's a rumor that goes out that her first husband gave her a get before he went on his trip to Antarctica. Because otherwise, how would she accept Kiddushin from another man? So there must be a rumor that she got a get, right? And we said in our Mishnah, if there's a rumor you got to get, you have to assume that she really did. But here we're saying that even though she accepted Kiddushin from a second man, she can go back to her first husband, even though there's a rumor she got to get. Says the Gemara, why? It must be because you assume, where am I? Lav mishum, God bless you, damrina al t'nai kaddish. Why don't we, because we assume that the second man married her, but only married her on condition that she was not divorced, that her husband was dead, right? But if he turns out he comes back when he's not dead, then there's no marriage. You can just get rid of the second marriage. So you see that you can make it up, even though there's nothing in the case that led him to believe there's a condition. Shani hatam dati bav kama arer. No, there it's different. It's because the husband showed up and he said, I never divorced her, right? And so therefore you can, it's no rumor because the husband himself denied it. He says, well, if that's true, that the husband denied it, so Nisei Tanami, what if she even married the second guy, consummated it? So it says, well, it's true. She wouldn't be married, but there we ask her, because Nisei of the Isura, she did an action that was wrong, because she slept with another man, then Kansur Rabbanan. Then Rabbanan made a knas that she can't go back and marry and stay with her first husband, or her only husband. But Nidkadsha, of the Isura, if she just did Kiddushin when there was no Isur, then Lo Kansur Rabbanan, then there was no knas. Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi, I got to take this a step further. Kol kala dot chazik bebeidina lav kalahu. Any rumor that wasn't established and investigated and evaluated and found to be viable in Beit Din doesn't count. So the fact that people are talking about this, that it's all over the internet, does not make it a kol. A kol means that people came to Beit Din and said, we heard this, and Beit Din asked them, follow-up questions and said, okay, it sounds like you really heard it. And that's considered to be a kol that would require a woman to get a get if a word went out that she was married. Says the Gemara, where my Vamar Vashi, kol kala debater nisuim lo chashin. And as we said earlier, if it happens after she's married, right? People are like, oh, there's a rumor that she was married before you. It doesn't matter. We don't pay any attention to that kol. We can't ruin marriages based on that. Says Gemara, but the implication is bater erisin chashin. that if she just got engaged, which is real marriage, you have to worry. And he couldn't consummate the marriage with her because she has a reputation as already being married. Says Rav Chaviva, I disagree with that. I feel about her erisin nami lo chashinan la. Even if she's just got erisin, and then someone spreads a rumor, you don't have to worry. And that's in fact how we paskin, that we don't worry about a kol as long as she's already married to the second person. They sent a case. This is our final case before the Mishnah from the Bei Rav. Rav was presumably died, and remember, after Rav died, his Talmidim would send questions to Shmuel, who was the other pillar in Bavel at that time. And they sent a case to Shmuel. Yilamdenu Rabbeinu. What about the following case? What if Yatza le Kol Mi Rishon? What if a woman is rumored to have married Levi? Let's just say. And then, so she needs a get in order to marry somebody else. But she doesn't get a get, and she walks over to somebody else, and they have a big wedding, and she takes Kiddushin, right? Uba acher v'kidsha Kiddushay Torah. Another person comes and marries her, meaning the real way. There's witnesses, there's everything. So what do you say? Mahu. Does you remember, you're not supposed to get married, but she did it. So what happens after the fact? So Shalach Le, so Shmuel sent back Teitzei. She's got to divorce the second guy, or at least leave the second guy. You investigate. Look into what happened with the first one. But until you know what happened with the first one, she cannot remain married to the second one. The Hodiano, and then tell me what happened. Says Gemara, sorry, Hodiano. Says Gemara, what does that mean? Hamido davar al boryo. What does that mean that you can investigate? What does that mean? That if you go and investigate and find out that the first marriage was fake, right? It never happened. So then she's allowed to marry the second one, and you can ignore the kol, right? Then that proves mivatlin and kala, that you can cancel a rumor. She's rumored to have been married. You can now cancel it. But the problem is that if you remember from Amud Aleph, Shmuel lived in Naharda, and Naharda was a place where you didn't cancel a kol. We said Naharda atre de Shmuelhu. Naharda is Shmuel's neighborhood. V'lo mivatli kala. They don't cancel a kol in Naharda. Ella, it means the following. If it turns out that the first one really was married, it wasn't just a rumor, then the fact that the second guy gave her money for marriage means nothing, right? A married woman who goes and accepts Kiddushin from somebody else, there's nothing there. She doesn't need to get from the second guy because he never married her. Then, lo tzricha get misheni. The whole point is that you don't need to get from the second guy. If it turns out that the first guy was just a rumor, then she would need to get a get from both, from the first and the second. Right? Because you can't cancel a kol, according to Shmuel in Narda, and the second guy might be married to her because he married her real. But if it turns out that the first guy was really married to her, then the second guy does not need to give a get because nothing ever was consummated halachically from that marriage. And in fact, that argues with Rafuna. Pliga de Rafuna, Dam Rafuna, Eshet Isha, Pashta Yada v'kibla Kiddushin me'acher, mikudeshet. A woman who is married, and she goes over after she's known to be married, and she accepts Kiddushin from another man, that's mikudeshet. Now, of course, she's not really married to the second guy, but she needs a get from him in order for her to go and marry somebody else. And that is from Rav Hamnuna. Dam Rav Hamnuna, ha'isha sha'amra lebala gerishtani, right? A woman who says to her husband, "You've divorced me," she's believed. Nemenet. Why? Because chazakah, there was an accepted principle. Ein isha mi'iza panel lifnei ba'ala. A woman would not have the chutzpah, would not have the audacity to say in front of her husband, I'm divorced, if it wasn't true. So therefore, we believe her. And so here too, if a woman who's married goes and accepts Kiddushin from somebody else, we have to be choshesh that maybe in fact she was divorced and this is a real marriage. But Shmuel disagrees with that, right? Idach, Hitmar of Hamnuna, that's only in front of him, b'fanav, but shelo b'fanav mi'iza u'mi'iza. If she is not in front of him, she would lie, and we don't trust her, and therefore we don't rely on her accepting Kiddushin from a second one to mean she's divorced or not married to the first person. We have time to do 5 more lines? Everyone's got a couple minutes? Okay, we're going to do a few more lines.
I got to jump to Tefillah.
Okay, thank you for joining. The first wide line, what happens in Shmuel's case where lo matzu davar al boryo? What if you don't find anything was true, right? So you cannot investigate and discover that she, in fact, is not married to the first guy. So there's a rumor she married the first guy. You definitely know she married the second guy. So what does she do? We can't verify what happened here. So Mahu, what do we do? Amar Rafuna migaresh rishon v'nosei sheni. She has to go get a get from the first one, and she could stay married or remarry the second one, because the first guy might have been married to her. It's a kol. He gives her a get. She marries the second guy. Says the Gemara, but you can't do the opposite. You can't get a get from the second guy and go marry the first guy. Why? My timer, because Ati the Meimar, people are going to say, wait a second. Maybe she was married to the first guy. That's why we had a rumor. He gave her a get. She went and married the second guy. He now gave her a get. She's going back and marrying the first guy. And remember, you're not allowed to go back and marry somebody after you divorce them. Machzir grushato min ha'irisin. It's returning a grusha from irisin, and that's prohibited. Of Shinina, brother of Idi Amar, I disagree with that. Af migare sheni v'nosei rishon. She can divorce the second guy and go back and get married for real now to the first guy. Because Meimer Amri, people would say she was never married to the first guy. Aini Rabbanan, the first time, right? Aini Rabbanan b'kiddushin b'kiddushay ta'ot haya. It was a kiddushay ta'ot, and therefore the first guy doesn't matter as the first marriage. She married the second guy. She got a get. And she went back and married the first guy, which she was never married to before. Finally, the last case is, let's say, 2 lines on the bottom. Yatsa ale kol mizeh umizeh. No, there's no facts here. There's just a rumor that this woman, Sarah, married Ruvain on Monday and married Shimon on Tuesday. And now we come to Beit Din and we're like, this is a mess. What do we do? Mahu. Amar of Papa, she's got to get a get from whoever she doesn't stay married to, because there's a kol, and a kol means that there's a suffix that she's married. So what she can do is, Afzu Migaresh Rishon, Benosei Sheni. She, because of the order I just gave you, she can't divorce the second guy and go back to the first guy, because she might have been married to the first guy, then married to the second guy, and now she's Machzir Grushato, right? She's going back to the first guy. But she can do the opposite, right? She can divorce the first one and marry the second one. Ameimar says, no way. Mutarot l'shnehem. She can marry both. You just ignore this whole rumor. This rumor doesn't really matter. She has to get, you don't ignore the rumor. She has to get a get from whoever she doesn't stay married to, but she can go in any order that she wants. The hilchata mutarot l'shnehem. The halacha is that she can marry either one. It's a rumor, but it's not a rumor that really is that strong, and therefore she gets a get, and she can go back and marry either one that she wants or neither one. But if she wanted to marry somebody else, she'd have to get a get from both of them. That is where we'll stop. Tomorrow, Miriam is picking up, I believe, or Dov is on.
I am picking up, but I'm going to start at 8 tomorrow.
Okay, we got that announcement. Hopefully, it'll be in the WhatsApp.
I'll put it in the chat. So.
Okay, and Mazel Tov in advance on finishing Gittin.
I will not be on live. I'll catch a recording later in the day due to another commitment tomorrow.
Okay, well, but Mazel Tov.
Okay, so then, Kenneth, is there a way that you can join earlier? Because I'm teaching also at RJC earlier at at 7 o'clock.
Perhaps I might be able to do that one.
Okay, so you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to actually record it from over there with the Byte link, and so everybody can catch it. I'll put it in the link. Okay.
Shavua Tov, everyone.
Shavua Tov.
Boker Tov.